Welcome back to Jersey Matters. Election Day is November 2nd, and once again this year, for voters in New Jersey, things are going to be a little bit different. Here is Monmouth County Clerk Christine Hanlon to explain.
Thanks so much for doing this. We wanted to check in with you, and we appreciate your time. We wanted to check in because there's been so much talk about voting laws across the country and the voting rules last year for the pandemic, and now the voting for this election. Has anything changed? How, when, and how can people vote?
Well, there's a big change this year, and thanks for having me with you today. Earlier this year, Governor Murphy signed a law mandating what's called early in-person voting. And that is the biggest change this year to our voting process. It's something that has never happened before in New Jersey. So it's a whole new procedure that the county election offices have been working to implement. There are three ways to vote this year. Our traditional voting methods that people are normally used to, except for last year, that was just a one-time situation in 2020. But normally we have in-person voting on Election Day, and we have vote by mail, and which begins 45 days prior to Election Day. And
so that's happening right now.
That is ongoing, yes. By law, 45 days prior to Election Day, ballots must be sent out to voters, and then on an ongoing basis. So if you were already on the list, you would have been in that first mailing that the county clerks did for 45 days before the election. And now people can apply for vote by mail ballots at any time leading up to Election Day. And now, for the first time in New Jersey history, we have this in-person early voting procedure. And that's very exciting for New Jersey. And it's going to be a 9-day period where voters can vote in person on machines at specially designated polling locations.
There was some consternation about that, I remember, when it was first announced, because some counties were saying, we can't possibly get ready for this on time. You're throwing this at us at the last minute. We are worried that we're going to be able to get all of the mechanisms in place in time. Has there been any problems?
Well, I would say it has been very challenging for the election officials to implement this in a short period of time. When you look at what is involved in implementing an early voting in-person procedure, there are many components that go along with this requirement. For instance, in order to effectuate early voting, we have to switch to all new technology throughout the state. And it is mandated that we have what's called electronic poll books. Voters are used to going into a polling location and they see a paper poll book, and the poll worker finds their name and the voter signs the paper poll book, and then they proceed to go to the voting machine. Because of early voting, all of the counties had to purchase these electronic poll books, not just for the early voting period, but also for every polling location on Election Day, which you can imagine is a big deal because, number one, the poll books had to be certified by the state. They weren't certified at the time the law was passed. And then the counties had to begin choosing the product that they wanted, going through the procurement process, and all of the technology that helps these electronic poll books work. It's not just, here's a book, set it up. These poll books have to talk to each other for early voting all day long, so that voters don't go to one polling location and then go to another. The electronic poll books have to be talking to each other and updating constantly throughout the day. So it's the procurement, it's purchasing all this equipment and making sure the connectivity is there, getting all the components to make sure that they can connect, making sure everything's secure. And that's only one piece of the puzzle. You also had to invest in new voting machines for early voting. because there are only a limited number of polling locations that will be open for the early voting process.
So how much lead time did you get to have to do all of this?
A couple of months. We're still getting recommendations and regulations as the days go on with respect to things that we have to do. Every time you accomplish one piece of the puzzle, there's a new query that comes up, and it's, oh, nobody thought of that. We now have to address that issue.
You know what's going on right now? Voters are hearing you say all this, and they're going, oh, no, there's going to be problems.
Well, I do not expect there to be problems. I mean, our election officials have been working every day to make sure that this process is going to be able to be implemented. We've done things like this before. I have to say, around the state, you have so many dedicated county election officials that typically just rise to the challenge. We've had changes in the past, like last year. We had this primarily mail-in ballot election, and we all, in a very short period of time, had to rise to the challenge to accomplish the task. So I know so many election officials around the state personally. We're all meeting constantly. Everyone learns from each other. Bob Giles, who's the director of the Division of Elections for the state of New Jersey, has been providing as much guidance as he possibly can. When a law is passed, it doesn't account for every nuance and every technicality and every issue that needs to be addressed. So, as we go along, these issues are being addressed. But I have to say, it's been a few months now, so the equipment has been purchased. We're in the implementation phase throughout the state, where everyone is preparing the ballots for these machines to be deployed. We're at that point in time where we're sort of at the end of being ready to go, because it's coming soon. October 23rd is the date that the in-person early voting starts.
Is there any of this, all of that you're talking about, that's going to confuse voters at all? What are the most important things they need to know?
Well, I would say the most important points are that there are 3 ways to vote this year. Vote by mail, if you so choose, vote on election day in person, or vote early in person at one of the specially designated polling locations. Anyone can find information about where their polling locations are, either for early or for on election day, if they go to their county election officials website. In Monmouth, it's monmouthcountyvotes.com, or go to the state website. It's easy to find. And I know election officials across the state have been on overdrive trying to educate voters about this new process. Just about all of the counties are doing a voter education procedure.
Okay. Is the safest and most secure way to vote in person?
I guess it depends on how you look at it. I voted by mail for many, many years, and I've never been concerned about the safety and security about my mail-in ballot, because I know how it's handled. We have so many dedicated election officials, so I am not concerned about that at all. But I opted out of voting by mail this year because I want to participate in the new procedure of early voting, and I want to, experiment myself and go in and try the new procedure, which I expect to work very smoothly. So I would say that really any of the 3 ways is a very secure way to vote in New Jersey. A lot of time.
The easiest way to make a mistake, right, is if you're voting by mail. You wouldn't make a mistake. You know everything. I mean, not having the signature right, not putting the right envelopes in. I know that happened in other states. That if you go in person, you're going to have somebody there to guide you.
Yes. So the easiest way to do it is to vote in person on a machine, for sure. As you said, with voting by mail, there are all the different components. You have to seal the envelope. It is a little bit more complicated. I wouldn't say though it's less secure. I would just say it's a little bit complicated because of all of the whole ballot packet. With voting in person, it is the simplest. You just go in and you make your choices on the machine. With the new voting technology, I know here in Monmouth County, you have the ability to double check what you're doing. The equipment that we invested in Monmouth County is a certain type of machine where once you make your selections, you have the opportunity to review it one more time before you finalize and cast your ballot. And if you want to, if you feel like you made a mistake, you can go back and ask a poll worker to help you, refresh the screen. So you're right. It is much easier to go out to a polling location to vote on the machine.
Yeah, I made the mistake of saying safe and secure, which brings up all other topics.
A whole variety of issues.
I'm not going to get into any of that right now. I just want to help people to get out and vote. And I know that's been your job. And it sounds like Monmouth County is in good hands. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Monmouth County Clerk Christine Hanlon. Next on Jersey Matters.
In the news, we've recently been hearing more and more about a breakthrough case of COVID-19. So what does that mean exactly, and where does that leave us in this pandemic? We'll share that with you coming up next on Jersey Matters.